If you compare beer with bratwurst,
And cheese with wine,
or even whiskey,
with donuts,
then we think you can pair all of these delicious drinks with
murder,
conspiracies
missing persons.
and more.
Drink with us as you feed your craving for true crime and creepy stories.
And we are here and back.
Back in here. Whether people want us to be or not. Hey.
I'm already taking a drink. It's good stuff. So, how are we this evening?
Parched, because I'm not going to take a drink until you tell me what we're sipping on.
I was getting parched. Yeah. I'm already a little in it because I had a work function tonight.
Oh, yes.
So I had a few there.
So we're going to see how this goes.
Yeah, everybody might be able to see the brighter side of me.
Here.
Yes, because we got video going.
They can see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And, and in fact, last week's episode is going to go up tomorrow on our YouTube page.
Yay.
Yeah. Super thrilled about that. But yeah, we're recording everything now, and I think we've mentioned it before, and nothing really worked out. But we got it all figured out.
Yeah.
I got it all figured out,
And now we're not just a treat for your ears.
Yeah. If you want to be a creeper and creep up and
See
look
what we
at what
look
we're
like?
doing, you can watch the video. All right. So you are going to tell us a real fun tale. Take some place in Cleveland, correct?
Cleveland, Ohio, like the mid 30s.
I thought you said it was like late 20s to mid 30s.
No, I set the scene in the late 20s because things are looking up for the United States as a whole. And then something happens and kind of the entire country goes into a downturn, which
So
set...
the Great Depression?
Yes, sir. Good job. A+, which kind of set the scene for the events of this story to unfold. I don't think that this individual could have done what he did had the world not just gone crazy for a little bit, at least in the United States.
Interesting. So, you gave me a little bit about the era where it takes place. I decided to go with era this time because this era is uber interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Takes place during the Prohibition era.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, now that you've given me like exact dates, we're probably a little after Prohibition, at least for some of these killings or when they start, or I don't know. We'll find out when you tell us. But anyway, it's close enough. We're going to go with Prohibition, drinks that were popular during the Prohibition, which is funny because you think, oh, yeah. Make all drinks illegal, all liquors illegal, all libations illegal, and nobody's going to drink, right?
It's like
wrong.
It's like you're making a political statement right there.
Wrong. There was a lot of drinking being done.
A lot of drinking.
There was a lot of very popular drinks, and actually some drinks came from this time too. Getting creative with what you had, because I think a lot of it was liquors. Like it's a little easier to distill liquors than it is some of these others, and so I'm sure they had to get creative. We're going to change it up a little bit. I went with two different drinks, so midway or whenever we want to have the second, we'll obviously pause, and then I'll introduce that second one.
It'll probably be at a really convenient time,
probably
like right in the middle of a really heinous description.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, so drink number 2.
So I need a drink. So the first one we're going to go with, it is called the Bee's Knees.
Oh,
which I love
very
that
colloquial
phrase.
America,
Yes.
circa the 1920s and 30s, I think.
I think it's the best phrase that came from there. I think we should bring it back.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Instead of saying cool, that's cool.
That's the bee's knees.
That's the bee's knees. I mean, it's such a better description. doesn't make a lot of sense because
You're picturing knees on bees right now. Every single person who's like, does it make sense? Is it a good description? Do bees have knees?
does anybody actually like know what a bee's knee looks like off the top of their head? I mean, we've all seen it. They have them, kind of.
I don't know.
I mean, they got a joint. It like, you know, their little legs.
You look a lot closer at bees than I ever look at bees. I would say spiders have knees.
I think
They're known for their legs.
Their legs are jointed. I don't. But now that you said spider, I don't know if spiders have knees, or is it just like one long string?
What podcast are we doing?
Anyway, that was already tangenting and great start already.
This is what you get when Jason is a few drinks in.
I can't even introduce without.
No more hanging out with your friends before we have to record.
Yeah, probably a good idea. Or it'll be really fun.
We'll see.
We should have more.
So we will see.
Bee's Knees. Both our drinks.
Knees.
They're based off of a gin. That's why on our picture.
Gin is very that era, I feel.
I do too. It's a weird drink. Tastes like
licking a tree.
Licking a tree, yeah. Like all these evergreens over here in the mountains.
I'm just going to go lick one.
Yeah, just
look good enough to
liquefy one of those, and that's what gin is.
You have to explain it because I almost just took a drink.
Oh, I almost got you. I'm trying to. So it's gin.
Gin.
Honey. Which our honey
comes from
a friend of ours.
One of my favorite people. She also listens. And Patty and Eddie, according to the label on their honey jar.
Patty and Eddie.
The queen bee herself, the bee's knees herself, has her own hive, and she collected it and she gave it to us. And our children love her honey and her jam.
Yeah, we got this not too long ago, and it's pretty much gone.
Yeah.
Like, we were lucky to squeeze some out for these drinks.
Our son eats it by the spoonful. So...
Which is supposed to be healthy to have
these
honey from the
bees.
state you come from. That means it contains like the pollination, the pollutants of the air, and it helps with.
Anyway, thank you so much for the honey. Yeah. Keep it coming,
and
Patty.
Then there's one other ingredient.
We love your jarred goods.
It's lemon juice, fresh lemon juice is what it calls for, and that's what we used.
It sounds very like fresh, like bright.
Yeah, and going into fall, I feel like it's not quite the fall drink. It's definitely a summer drink or spring drink. But
we'll make it do. Colorado has been ridiculously warm.
Honestly, this was the only one I was gonna do because it was so easy. I like easy. But the other one we're gonna do, it's I do.
All right.
The other one we're going, you'll see because the name is freaking amazing.
It's very light. The bee's knees. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, that's good.
Oh, that is really good. Holy smokes.
Kind of like if
my
you were to like
goodness.
find a flower that smelled like this, I'd imagine it would taste like it tastes like a flower, but not in a bad way.
It literally has taken the gin flavor that is just like harsh and tamed it.
Yeah, that honey cuts right through it.
To where I would suck on this lozenge. It is like almost has a flavor of like a cough lozenge, but it's completely lovely.
It does. Like almost a Ricola.
Yeah.
But
not. Like, it's a beverage.
Drop.
It's not a medicine. It is really delicious.
It's the candy form of Ricola.
This is probably the favorite drink so far that we've had on this podcast.
Wow.
It's really lovely.
Would you dare say it's the bee's knees?
It literally is the bee's knees. It's every bee's knees I've ever even seen. It's ridiculous. Matthew McConaughey has just joined us. I think it's quite tasty.
I do too.
I recommend.
I like it a lot. It's going to be hard to just sip on, but I need to.
Yeah, you do.
Oh. I scraped it across the...
It sounded like a whoop. All right.
But wait, I did want to just add a little education on my side.
Okay.
For those that didn't know.
Teach me.
Prohibition went from 1919 to 1932.
Okay.
So over a decade of alcohol being illegal, which is insane to me. I just alcohol being illegal is insane.
Yeah.
How did they do that? You think things are bad now with politicians? They had politicians actually decide to make alcohol illegal across the United States. It makes no sense.
Yeah. We could go into like all the results or the ramifications of a government deciding to make a substance illegal and what kind of like counterculture that created.
Oh, yeah. And then you could go into the next things to make illegal and the countercultures that start from it.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
Any which way.
This isn't a political podcast, so we won't go into that. But It is perfectly paired with, we could do perfectly paired with politics.
We could, if we wanted to. But I will say a podcast about a story that comes after prohibition is absolutely perfectly paired with a drink that is made with a liquor that was very common during prohibition. This is perfectly paired with.
Love it.
So during the 1920s, Cleveland, Ohio could be described as a happening place. Women in flapper dresses danced the Charleston as new types of music flowed from the instruments of live bands, while young men in full tuxedo dress stood by smoking cigarettes and making business deals. Literally, an entire young generation just living life to the fullest as they celebrated the end of the First World War. The population in this American city was on the rise, due in large part to an influx of immigrants who added not only to the developing and vibrant culture, but the labor market as well. The local economy, which was based on manufacturing, was experiencing a boom, which definitely benefited the many millionaires who called Cleveland home. Every night, going home to the safety of their grand mansions, which dotted the city. The Terminal Tower was one of the many skyscrapers erected during this time, changing the skyline of the growing city, just as the establishment of many cultural centers like the Playhouse Square changed the social scene. In Cleveland, like many places in post-World War America, it was the jazz age, and it was glorious.
It sounds like that book, Great Gatsby.
I think this is a little before.
A little before? Is
maybe
Great Gatsby
not.
is more, is that more Great Depression?
No,
then,
actually,
or?
I think you might be right. It's my favorite book in the whole wide world, so it's making me sad that I don't know if it's after World War One.
Just like picturing.
No, it's after
what I
World War
picture.
One. 100%. That's this
when I read that.
this time period.
All right.
Yep. However, Cleveland's prosperous trajectory came to a crashing halt when in 1929, the Great Depression hit the United States, affecting Cleveland in a particularly hard way. Where once opportunity and promise could be found throughout the city, sadness and darkness abounded as workless individuals gravitated to certain areas within the city with the simple hope of survival. It was in one such setting that a serial killer, technically unknown to this day, hunted, decapitated, and dismembered at least 12 victims, a majority of whom have never been identified. This is the story of the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run.
Oh, that's such a good name.
I know. I didn't give it to him. Somebody else did.
I should not cough into the microphone. Sorry. Man. All right. So 12 victims at least.
Yep.
Most of them unidentified.
Correct.
Which is what nobody cared to be like, hey, this person's missing.
It was a transient community.
Oh, man. So were they mostly prostitutes or?
I guess you're going to have to find out along with everybody else. Kingsbury Run, which was also referred to at the time as the Hobo Jungle, was a destination for those individuals who found themselves out of work and with no place to call home. Kingsbury Run, located near Lake Erie, was a shanty town set upon a riverbed that ran along the Cuyahoga River. To the east of the run was the Roaring Third Police Precinct. The Roaring Third was home to bars, brothels, gambling dens, and cheap hotels, referred to as flop houses.
Is Roaring Third the name of the city?
It's a
or the
police
town?
precinct.
That's such a cool
I know.
police precinct name.
Sounds like a cool
Roaring
place.
Third.
Go to a bar, hit up a brothel, lose your shirt at a gambling den, and then sleep it off in a flop house.
That's what happened to America.
I'll tell you what happened. The Mad Butcher happened. It was...
This isn't a good idea to have so much freedom. People kill. Like one serial killer ruins it all. Come on.
If we could all just live in this like debauchery without somebody ruining it for the rest of us. Jeez, Mad Butcher.
I mean, at least like Sodom and Gomorrah took like thousands and thousands of people to ruin it. It
Nope,
wasn't
just the Mad
person.
Butcher. It was here in Kingsbury Run in September of 1934 that a young man walking along the shore of Lake Erie is going to discover the remains of a woman in her mid-30s. The remains discovered were not whole or intact. Instead, her torso, along with the upper portion of her thighs, which were still attached to the trunk, were found laying on the shore. Her lower legs had been intentionally amputated at the knee. These limited remains were examined by Cuyahoga County Coroner A.J. Pierce. He noted that the skin of the victim had been treated with some sort of chemical preservative, which left the skin red, tough, and leathery.
Ooh, leathery.
Mm-hmm.
Did anything say like what the preservative was used for?
No.
Oh, I wonder if it's like to make cowhides or something.
Maybe. I don't know.
Some human skin hides, some human skin lamps.
It's like the opposite of Wild Bill or whatever in the Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs.
You don't put the skin on the lotion.
You don't put the lotion on the skin.
Oh, I was so excited for that, and then I ruined it.
Oh, you were so close.
Well,
we'll still give it to you.
We
Half
don't
a point.
We don't redo things on this podcast.
No, never.
Never. Over the course of the investigation, a few other body parts belonging to this female victim would be found, but her head was never among the body parts recovered. This victim would be dubbed the Lady of the Lake, and her true identity was never, ever discovered.
Oh, I bet you there's some like haunting tales of the Lady of the Lake.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, that's
Any
why she
sort
got
of
the name.
mist on Lake Erie comes from the Lady of the Lake. I guarantee it.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
It would be 2 more years before the Lady of the Lake would be officially considered one of the Mad Butcher's victims. Because of this, in addition to the moniker Lady of the Lake, this woman would also be known as Victim Zero.
Oh, that'd be an awesome movie name.
Both her names are amazing.
Yeah.
Both.
They knocked it out of the park with her.
She doesn't know her real name, but she's got
God rest her
2
soul.
great code names.
Yeah, she'd be dead by now anyway, so.
Then, yes.
We could talk ill.
Then, in September of 1935, which is a full year after the remains of the Lady of the Lake were discovered, a decapitated corpse belonging to a white male was discovered by 2 teenage boys at the base of Jackass Hill.
Old Donkey Hill?
That's what it was called. I can't even imagine a world in which you could be like, this over here is Jackass Hill. But it was located where 49th Street dead ends into the Kingsbury Run. In addition to being decapitated, this victim had been emasculated. He just
emasculated?
took a drink. Mm-hmm.
His pee-pee was cut off?
Yes. Yes.
On Johnny Knoxville
Dr.
Hill?
Jason. That's exactly what happened.
Oh, man.
Yikes. Yeeks.
So we got a female and a male. The male pretty much made into a female.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
The remains were naked, but for one sock. It was noticeably clean, or the remains were noticeably clean. And the remains had also been drained of blood. It was noted that there were clear signs of rope burns on each of the victims' wrists.
Oh, during like a piece of meat from a butcher?
Yeah, a mad butcher. A real mad
And
butcher.
rope burns on the wrist, so kind of hung from his hands.
Now, the cause of death of the mad butcher's first official victim was determined to be decapitation. So the victim was alive until decapitated, which to me, I feel like decapitation usually happens after as like a necessity. Like I can't fit your body into my luggage, so I have to chop
identity
your head off.
back then.
Yep. And using fingerprints, these remains were identified. Edward Andrassy was a 28-year-old male who lived in the Roaring Third.
They had fingerprints back then? They had a database they could check?
I have no idea.
That's okay.
But
we'll trust the sources.
he was identified as a man who lived in the Roaring Third, which remember is that precinct that butts up against the run.
Okay, yeah.
The investigation revealed that Edward had left his home on Thursday evening and that he had been murdered the following night. Despite searching, the police could not find anyone that had spoken to or even seen Edward after he left his home. While searching in the vicinity of where Andrassy's remains were found for more clues, obviously regarding his murder, police discovered a second body. This body had also been emasculated.
Let me guess. Head's missing?
Yes, as well as another important body part.
I don't know, but
for men.
Head missing as the last thing. So he got his pee-pee chopped off before he was dead too.
I will get to that. It was observed that this set of remains had been treated with the same chemicals as the Lady of the Lake, right? Which is also victim 0. This victim was never identified, but was determined to be a 40-year-old white male who actually had been dead for a few weeks at the time his body was discovered. Despite having the idea of Andrassy, police could not make any connections to anyone who could reasonably be the second unidentified body discovered close to Andrassy's remains.
What? Oh, so... and
more like a dumping ground, right?
Yeah. And is this...
So
how far after the first victim or the second victim being found is this?
They were found right... within days of each other.
And then
but
victim 0 was like 2 or 3. Oh, a year. Okay.
Before. Okay. But the older male would have been killed prior to Andrassy.
Yeah.
Yep. Over a year later, in January of 1936, the body parts of a woman were discovered. These body parts were neatly wrapped in newspaper and then safely nestled inside of a half-bushel basket.
Bushel basket.
Do you want to take a guess what a bushel basket is?
It's not like
It's basically the bee's knees. That's what it is for sure.
I want to say it's either like a picnic basket or it's like a basket you collect fruit in.
Ding, ding, ding. A bushel of apples, right? So bushel baskets are those circular, large, like woven wood baskets that you collect apples in.
Yeah.
Now,
and they don't have like any handles on them or anything.
I think they do. Tiny little metal ones.
Yeah, little metal
side.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely not what I'd want to be carrying a body around in.
Yeah, that's not what I would choose. I would not carry a body in a bushel basket. I would also not put a body in a bushel basket. Like two separate ideas. I don't understand why the Mad Butcher did this at all.
I'm sure they only had so many baskets to choose from back then. He's like, I need a big basket.
During Depression, I don't know where he gets a bushel basket. In Cleveland, I feel like if they would have just followed the bushel basket, they probably could have found this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no apple orchards.
I'm sure there is.
In Kingsbury Run, he's the only guy walking down the shantytown road carrying a basket of apples.
Yeah, but what's around there? It's all farms.
Is it? Geography master? Should we look it up?
No, I've met people from Cleveland.
All right.
And at
I'll
the whole
acquiesce
Midwest,
to
like outside of the big cities, it's all farmland.
All right. I'm going to acquiesce to you. Now, this body part filled basket was left abandoned alongside the Hart Manufacturing Building. Now, despite a tireless search on the internet, I could not determine what the Hart Building actually manufactured. Just a manufacturing building.
Hearts.
Spelled H-A-R-T. Now, the remaining body parts connected to this victim were located in a nearby lot 10 days after the discovery of the basket. But alas, her head would never be located.
Jeez, and 10 days after.
So either they were there for 10 days or our mad butcher returned 10 days later to deposit them. All these questions will never be answered.
I wonder what those body parts gotta look pretty shrunken at that point. You know?
I can't. I wouldn't even know what they're supposed to look like. So.
Sorry.
Now, the cause of death of victim number 3, right, which is actually the Mad Butcher's 4th victim, because we have victim 0,
right,
was determined to be decapitation. But this time, the killer had waited for rigor mortis to completely set in before he disarticulated the body, which disarticulation is where you separate two bones where they connect at a joint, which clearly is what he's been doing to his victim's remains. But this time he waited for the body to be completely stiff and hard before chopping it up.
Oh, wow. So they could probably tell that because like whatever part of the other part is still on there since you're chopping off at
the amount of blood
joints.
I don't know.
Well, I would think like if there's, chop a little above the elbow or something, like it's a certain way. It's stuck.
I'm assuming in 1930
stiffness.
something their science was sound, although it could just.
I'm sure it's stiffness. Like it has to be so.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, well, I don't know. I wonder if bodies go into rigor mortis if you chop them up before they go into rigor mortis.
Interesting. Just like a tiny little femur in rigor mortis. I don't know. Maybe they don't.
If you chop at the elbow off before rigor mortis, if you picked up that part of the arm, it'd still be kind of floppy.
Right. I wonder if it has to be connected for it to actually
like
harden.
the whole body has to like send it into that.
Fascinating. Those are really good questions we're not going to answer.
No, and we'll forget to look them up, so we'll never know. We'll probably mention it again, like 10 episodes
and it will be the bee's knees. Now, the investigators were able to positively identify these remains as Florence Flo Polio. Flo was a waitress and a barmaid who lived on the edge of the Roaring Third. She had been arrested a few times for prostitution, but was described by many as friendly and kind. That was, however, until she drank too much, which unfortunately was a fairly common occurrence with Flo.
Oh, Flo.
Which
I can't believe that's a real name.
You can expect, considering Flo generally surrounded herself with pimps, bootleggers, drug addicts, and madams, which I call a heck of a Friday night.
Heck yeah, that's a good circle of friends there.
Oh, Flo, where did your life go wrong?
You are who you hang out with, I guess.
My dad used to say, bad friends bring bad luck. Flo. You were really asking for it. Jeez. Then
so Flo
is identified.
Any idea how? Was it her fingerprints?
I have no
DNA.
idea. So I think what is really interesting is several of my sources talked about like referencing missing persons. And for the most part, they just didn't have missing persons reports that they could like connect with these bodies found. I'm assuming somebody noticed Flo was gone. Yeah. She's a waitress. Yeah. She's a barmaid. She lives in the Roaring Third. Somebody would have noticed and perhaps they connected.
Yeah. And busted for prostitution a number of times.
The cops knew her.
There was a lot of people that knew.
Lots of people knew Flo.
What her little markings were.
Oh, Flo.
On her body.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, oh yeah.
But
that was definitely Flo.
At least
she
it got
had that
her
mark
identified.
on her torso.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, In June of 1936, 2 young boys found the head of a white male that had been wrapped in a pair of trousers discarded underneath the East 55th Street Bridge. The next day, the body belonging to the head was located lying near a police building. These remains were clean, and just like one of the previous victims, had also been drained of blood. Despite having fingerprints plus several distinctive tattoos, this victim would never be identified. And if I'm remembering correctly, authorities literally created this entire like when you go to a museum, what do you call the things you look at? Like a whole setup at like a World's Fair to try to identify this body because of the distinctive tattoos and like sculptures of what his face should have looked like. Nothing.
Really?
He never was identified.
What? Like it may be
Exhibit.
a passer
That's
exhibit.
the word. Gosh.
I almost couldn't even
the
like
bee's
answer the
knees.
rest of the question because I
Name
was
that
so
word.
stuck on that word. Which you would think maybe that's just, it's got to be an out of towner
He's a
passing
transient,
through,
just trying to find a place to live,
Well,
a
yeah,
place to
yeah.
work. Yeah.
That, especially with the tattoos. I mean, I can't imagine tattoos were
Distinctive,
like super.
6 tattoos in
And-
the 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody knows that guy.
Well,
you know.
clearly nobody knew this guy except for the Mad Butcher.
It probably picked him on for a reason. It's crazy. Like so many things are different between these victims so far, but also a lot kind of the same. Like I could really see where they're like, this has to be the same type of killer.
It makes you think
Or the
that
same
he
person.
wasn't picking based on like gender or ethnicity. We're going to talk about a different ethnicity in a minute. He was picking based on the likelihood that that victim would be missed.
Mm-hmm. And I think he's
That
also,
makes me sad.
he's probably also like, I don't want to be caught. So I'm going to do these all a little different.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have a certain
His MO
tell.
is that he has no MO except decapitation,
Yeah.
which is very particular.
But back then, it kind of makes more sense for a serial killer because it's the identification's gone, which I think lends to your theory of he just doesn't want to be caught. Like
Yeah.
he's picking a certain type of victim.
Yeah. Now, about a month later, a teenage girl stumbled upon another set of decapitated remains. These belonged to a 20-year-old white male, and they were found in the woods near Clifton Road and Big Creek. This victim had been dead for roughly 2 months. The head of this victim and a pile of bloody clothes were found nearby, and investigators felt confident that this victim had been killed where the body was discovered due to the amount of blood that had seeped into the ground. Yet again, this victim was never ID'd. I'm also super curious about how the Mad Butcher stripped off all his bloody clothes and then just walked home naked. And nobody knew. Like, did he have a change of clothes? Did he walk home at night? Was it common for a naked individual just to be walking through Kingsbury Run with
Maybe.
like a startled look on his face, a little blood smear on his cheek?
And
I don't know.
People that look at him, they're just like, I'm not gonna fuck with that guy.
No, he's naked. and
Clearly
he
out of
has
his mind.
A hatchet in his hand.
But you would think somebody would come forth
the
and
hatchet
after
is alleged. I made that up. Don't want to be sued.
by the butcher.
I just find it
No,
curious. Bloody clothes, and they can't match it to even like a profession.
If I
that
were
the
a
butcher
detective at the
had.
time, I would think that would give me a clue to what time
Of-
that crime took place.
Yeah.
It was very, very late at night. And I mean, you go to a smaller town now. I mean, even some bigger cities, there's just not a lot of people out. You know, like there's
Silverton, Colorado.
in some places there's no one out. No one. You can kind of get away with whatever you want.
But it also makes you curious. So if this victim was killed in the woods due to the amount of blood that was in the ground, where are these other people being murdered that their bodies have enough time to drain. Is he just killing them in the woods and then transporting their bodies to these other locations? And it's just like the exsanguination into the ground that's draining the body? Or is he hanging them? There's so many questions.
My first thought, and I don't want to jump the gun and throw out a theory that's going to end up being wrong, but
it's okay.
is he is like some sort of butcher.
A butcher shop.
A butcher shop. Like,
interesting.
The blood is already there. He's got everything he needs. All excuses of why it's messy.
This torso belongs to a pig. I know it has 2 nipples like a man, but it actually is a pig's torso.
Go
Move
ahead.
it along.
DNA test it. Oh,
Who
you
wants-
can't? Bummer.
Wait, you don't know what DNA is?
And there's no head, so you can't identify it.
See, this is stuff that I picture in my head when these stories are unfolding. Like, how does somebody get away with this?
That's all I'm picturing when you tell me these
I know.
stories. It's just
But
like,
Jason,
how?
the bodies
Why?
just keep coming. So in September of the same year,
What's our tick at right now? Like 5?
I told you to count.
Oh, wait, you shouldn't have counted on that. You need to drink your drink too.
Thank you. In September of the same year, a man had the misfortune of tripping over the upper half of a man's torso as he tried to hop a train at East 37th Street in Kingsbury Run, which is just like lovely. Fabulous. To hop that train and then you trip over a man's torso.
It sucks tripping over anything ever.
But just imagine a man's torso.
You're all pissed off, like, what the fuck? And you look back, and it's a dude's torso. And you probably don't even know. Like, you're like, what? What is
you
that?
can't afford the train ticket, so you're forced to run for it. So you're just like, talk yourself up, and you're like, I have to get on this train. So you're like taking breaths, you're doing stretches, and you're like 1, 2, 3, and then you take off towards the open door, and then you trip on something, and you're like, what the heck? And you turn around, and it's a man's torso. What a day. What
That's
a
got some
day in the
comedic
1930s.
levity
It's
right
ridiculous.
there. So he trips over the torso.
Just wait. This
Obviously misses his train.
This is my favorite victim ever, and I will tell you why. So the man trying to hop onto a train illegally trips over a torso, calls the police, did the right thing. Police wind up searching a nearby pool, which actually turned out to just be an open sewer. And it was here that they found the lower torso of the man, plus parts of both of the victim's legs.
I'm having a hard time picturing
Just
this pool.
pause. Man trips over a torso trying to get on a train.
Yep.
They search a nearby pool, which is actually just an open sewer.
That's where I'm lost at.
That's where fecal matter and urine drain.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Doesn't that drain into it's like a pond?
Well, that's this pool. Now, 600 people.
Only in Cleveland.
600 people showed up to watch as a diver was set to retrieve the body parts from this open sewer. So I'm assuming it was a slow work day in Cleveland.
What?
Or none of them worked.
I have so many questions. I don't even know which one to go with.
I promise it's a true story. I didn't make it up.
I think my first question is, what's a diver wear when going into
I can only picture
giant
those
potty?
giant iron helmets.
Like
that
from,
have-
what is it, Men of Honor? Like, remember that dive movie with Cuba Gooding Jr.?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, you've never...
No, I'm picturing
I think I'm getting the name wrong. I don't know if it is Men of
Man
Honor.
in the Iron Mask.
No, Men of Honor. There's a Cuba Gooding Jr.
No,
movie
I don't know
where
what you're
he's a
talking
diver.
about.
What?
I don't know. And
Oh,
I
it's
just
like the best
picture-
movie to actually like find out about this suit that you're talking about.
No, I picture one of those like giant scuba metal masks that have glass and like the
that Cuba Gooding Jr.
and then
wore.
it's like a tube, and then
Yeah.
somebody just is on the outside blowing into it.
Damn it! Is that? I gotta look it up. Yeah.
What do you see? A bunch of poop. Any body parts? Maybe. Like that is what I picture.
Oh, I
happening.
feel something hard. Nope. More
Nope.
poop.
I can't even. And then
We have a
600
poop
people.
segment.
It's like grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, Sally, and Bobby all in their like Sunday best watching this diver swim in a sewer.
Just eating the sandwiches they made
Look
for
that,
their
which are
picnic.
like half a sandwich because it's the Great Depression, and that's sad. And they're watching some guy
It's probably just crackers.
breaststroke through a sewer. Whoop, 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 whoop. Now, the cause of death of this victim, who is determined to be in her late 20s, was once again, can you guess it? Decapitation.
Yeah, that movie was called Men of Honor.
Okay. I've never seen it. It was sort of at this point in these series of heinous events that police and public began to put things together, and more attention was paid to the modes employed in the killings as a source of evidence.
So at this time, are they connecting all of them?
I'm assuming it's like
they're kind of like
maybe, and now 600 people are paying attention, and they're like, something weird is going on. Now, there were no hesitation marks on the bodies, suggesting that the murderer was comfortable and skilled in terms of anatomy. By the fall of 1936, the local media was in a full-blown frenzy regarding the existence of a serial killer. It was then that the nickname, the Mad Butcher, was assigned to the perpetrator of these killings.
Perfect naming.
Mad Butcher.
The Mad Butcher. That is an awesome serial killer name.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Yep.
How have I not heard of him? I am going to say this, though. We're going to stop at an opportune point. I think we need to, because I'm guessing we are past half mark right now.
Let me see my page number. We're exactly at half.
Oh, there we go. So,
I need to finish my bevy. We're going to play you a little bit of an ad from some of our favorite people, and we'll be back with the second 1930s inspired prohibition beverage that if you liked the bee's knees, you're absolutely going to love the next beverage choice.
Indeed. Listen for the chink.
Just play the real one.
This episode of the Perfectly Paired With podcast is brought to you by Jason Owen of the Impact Group. You'll be hard-pressed to find a better real estate agent than Jason Owen. If you live in the Denver metro area, be sure to contact him and ask him about the special savings you could receive as a first responder or a teacher. He is out there trying to help those that help us. Contact Jason Owen at the link in the description of this podcast and ask about those savings. That's Jason Owen of the Impact Group, a division of Your Castle Real Estate. All right.
Matthew McConaughey is back.
I am. And I'm back with a second pairing.
Is it the bee's knees?
It is not the bee's knees, but it is definitely part of the bee. Maybe the elbow. I don't know. Antenna.
What's it called?
It's called Corpse Reviver.
Oh, it brings the dead back to life.
It does. Just like this podcast. If we were sucking really bad before, we're about to revive it.
Sucking before? I don't even know.
It probably wasn't. I think we're great. But I think I need to do it a little different. Like Corpse Reviver.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Brings me back to our wrestling episode.
Yeah, that's what I was. I mean,
what's in it?
It kind of has a name. It's gin, Cointreau, Lillet Blonde.
Cointreau.
What was that one?
Cointreau.
I don't know what you're saying. And lemon juice, and then we don't have one ingredient for this guy. Yeah, I'll put the magazine out there for you.
I got it.
It is absinthe that we're missing.
Nobody's kissing the green fairy tonight.
Changes this a lot, and it's only a dash of it, but it's still a dash of black licorice taste.
I think it's delicious.
Well, just to give you a little bit about it, it's interesting because this one, you could find this drink as far back as 1860s.
Same time as Foster's.
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 Yeah, I still haven't
Foster's.
gotten that Australian accent down. But it was actually revived in the Prohibition era.
Wow.
Because of a handbook that came out called Savoy Cocktail Handbook. Okay.
Wow.
So
Now,
we got a good tale to pair
let's
this
bring it
guy
back
with.
to life.
Let's bring it back to life.
Let's revive this corpse. So, beyond just the gruesomeness of each slaying, people in Cleveland and the state of Ohio as a whole were very interested in the story, where despite having a significant number of victims, there were literally no real pieces of evidence or any suspects to be named. In response to the rise in attention being received by the string of decapitations, Mayor Harold Burton appointed a man named Elliot Ness as Cleveland's safety director. Elliot Ness was a former Prohibition agent, and he was the leader of a group called the Untouchables. Among his credentials proving that Elliot Ness would be up for the job of tracking down the Mad Butcher was the fact that Ness played a significant role in taking down none other than Al Capone in Chicago.
Damn, that's impressive. Everything about him sounds really cool, except the Prohibition. What do you call him? Prohibition
Agent?
That dude has a stick up his ass. He's going around ruining everybody's fun.
He's a legit good guy.
The government told me to do it, so I'm going to do it.
He's fighting the wrongs in the world, Jace.
Anyway, Al Capone did some horrible things, so
yeah, he did.
I got him there. I hope he gets a serial killer too.
Wow.
But all those people that he stopped from drinking.
Now, right around the same time, local authorities hosted what the newspapers dubbed to be the Torso Clinic. It was there that members of the police, the coroner, and other experts got together in an effort to profile the killer that was seemingly hunting undetected along Kingsbury Run.
Why do they call it a clinic? Was it like, do they have the torsos out?
I have no idea.
Like a museum?
Just a group of people trying to better themselves.
Expedition of torsos out.
I have no idea.
Everybody.
That's what they called it. The Torso Clinic. Where are you going this weekend? Torso Clinic? You? I tried to get into the Torso Clinic, but I didn't get in. No, they're just trying to solve some crimes, Jace. Give them a break. Now, as a result of the Torso Clinic, Detective Peter Marylow and Martin Zylewski were appointed to work the Mad Butcher case full-time. Completely dedicated to their job and obviously to justice for the victims, this duo would routinely dress up in order to fit in amongst those who dwelt in the seedy underbelly of the run. Between the two of them, they interviewed more than 1,500 people.
Jeez.
The Cleveland Police Department would wind up interviewing almost 5,000 people in their effort to track down the Mad Butcher.
How much time did they do that in? You said it was like a year? No. I thought you gave us a date.
I'm assuming it's from the beginning. So not
total.
Victim zero.
Not from the Torso Clinic till now.
No. Okay. In total.
Or since Ness got in till now. That's what
but we're not done.
That's a lot of people. You'd think they'd get an idea.
I think they're starting to get an idea. Okay. So just hang tight. From February to July of 1937, 3 more bodies were discovered. First, the upper half of a woman's torso washed up on shore east of Rottenhall. The lower part of this victim's torso would wash up 3 months later. Unlike the other victims, the cause of death of this woman was not decapitation, although she would be decapitated. Her decapitation happened post-mortem. This victim, a woman in her mid-20s, too, would never, ever be identified.
So...
she's a badass.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because...
homeboy tried to cut her head off, and she was like, not today, Mad Butcher.
Yeah,
You're
because
going to have to work for this.
and so you're saying it decapitation happened and then everything else after on
Yep.
her body happened after. And
What I'm saying is
chopping
every
off
other
all of them.
victim
Yeah.
died. They were alive. He cut their heads
Jeez,
off.
I'm just
This
now
woman was
realizing
like, no,
with
not
that-
going to happen.
the limbs and stuff being chopped off, those people were alive.
No. I think they were decapitated and then immediately dismembered until we had the victim that he waited for rigor mortis to set in, which to me says he was like almost scientific. He was like, I'm going to cut your head off. I'm going to like disarticulate your body. And then he was like, what if I just wait? See
It's
what
either
happens to your body?
scientific or medical. That's
You said he was a butcher.
now maybe.
All right. Well, we're on to the second body discovered between February to July of 1937. A skull was discovered by a teenage boy underneath a bridge. The skeletal remains of a smaller black woman were discovered in a burlap sack next to the skull. The victim would be unofficially identified as Rose Wallace using dental records. However, this identification led to nothing in terms of the investigation.
Ooh, so no ideas
Nothing.
of
What individual
she
could have
was,
wanted
what
to
she
hurt
was
Rose
doing.
Wallace?
That's what I'm just now kind of thinking about. Like, we don't have any idea of like what these people were doing.
No. None.
Weird.
Yeah. In July of that year, Cleveland would experience some labor problems in the flats, which I'm sure was common across the United States during the Great Depression. The flats were shanty homes located on the run. The National Guard would be called in to help maintain order. One night, a young guardsman who was standing watch at the West 3rd Street Bridge would see the first piece of victim number 9 floating in the wake of a passing tugboat in the Cuyahoga River. The rest of the body would be retrieved from the Cuyahoga River. Everything that was except...
The head.
Where are these heads, Jace?
On a dude's mantle somewhere.
They've never been found. Entire skulls. Like, it's Halloween in Colorado, as it is across the
under
United
somebody's
States.
house.
We have fake skulls all over our house right now. They're not teeny. They're not small. Where are these freaking heads?
Somebody's gonna buy this house in Cleveland that this guy lived at, and they're gonna be like, "Hey, we're gonna scrape it and build a new one."
Wow.
And as they're building or they're digging for the new foundation, they're gonna find, what'd you say, 12? They're gonna find 12
Well, some of the heads were found.
good old heads.
So maybe like 8.
Let's say 12 because we don't know of other
All right.
victims.
But here's the deal.
But this one throws me off. Do you know, or do I need to look up? Use my lookup skills. What's the Chattanooga River?
I swear on my life, it's Cuyahoga.
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 Damn it.
It's like, you don't listen.
I try. I do. So Cuyahoga, how do you spell that?
C-U-Y.
Or did you look it up? Can you tell me facts on the Cuyahoga?
It's literally the riverbed. So out of Lake Erie flows the Cuyahoga.
Oh.
It's the riverbed where Kingsbury Run has a shanty town. Anyway, can I tell you that the missing head is like one of many problems for victim number 9? Because the abdomen of victim number 9 had been gutted and the heart had been ripped out.
New things.
Yeah, this unidentified male victim was in his mid to late 30s at the time of his death. And we aren't done.
Jeez.
In April of 1938, what first appeared to be a dead fish resting on the banks of the Cuyahoga River actually turned out to be the lower half of a woman's leg. So you know how they always like, it's not a mannequin. Guess what? It's not a dead fish. 2 burlap sacks would be pulled out of the river 1 month later. Inside these bags, investigators found the torso and most of the rest of the victim's legs.
Poor guy. It's just like, oh, a sack of potatoes. Nope, not a sack of potatoes. Yeah, Cuyahoga River is a big river.
Well,
It kind of like you said, it is out of Lake Erie. I don't know. I think it starts. Yeah, this map is weird. Anyway, it is a big river. I just wanted to get an idea, like
it's fine.
like waves of the Cuyahoga
Look it
River.
up.
Is this Mississippi, where it's gigantic at certain points?
It's not that big, but
that's new. Like we got a lot of new things, like the river. Trying to hide a body in the river.
Lots of bodies.
Disemboweling, taking the heart.
Now, when the coroner tested the remains of this victim, it would be the first time that drugs were identified in the victim's system. But without the victim's arms, the coroner could not make any conclusions as to whether or not the drugs were used to sedate the victim or had the victim been a drug addict. In August of that year, this guy, a suspicious old quilt was spotted in a dump site. Within that quilt was a double-breasted blue blazer wrapped around the torso of a woman. Wrapped in butcher paper, placed in a makeshift box nearby, investigators discovered the legs and arms of the same victim. The perpetrator had used rubber bands to secure the butcher paper around the appendages. Also wrapped in a like manner was the head of the victim.
Jeez. All right, so we got a head finally.
Oh, this isn't the first head. I think it's like the second.
Oh.
But he's wrapping it in just weird freaking stuff. A jacket for a female.
Oh, that's right.
And then let's wrap butcher paper around everything else. It's just like...
The butcher paper... This late using butcher paper, it's almost like he's feeding off...
mad butcher.
Yeah, he's feeding off the name given to him. So maybe he's not a butcher. But the sites are so strange. I don't know. It almost seems like it's not the same person, but it does seem like the same person.
Or he's insane.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What if there's a group?
Well, the coroner, Coroner Gerber, stated that he believed that some of these body parts had actually been refrigerated. A second body was actually discovered just a few yards from the strange collection of oddly wrapped remains. As it would turn out, both of these victims could have been seen from the window of none other than security officer Elliot Ness.
What? So he's just playing with this detective?
Yeah, it was about this time that Elliot Ness had had enough. Could you imagine helping take down one of the most prolific gangsters of all time? And this mad butcher was making a mockery of you, leaving bodies for you in direct line of sight from your window.
That's fucked up.
Well, on
like
August,
for Ness.
he's going to strike.
Wow. Yeah. That'll get a detective.
Yes.
Do some overtime work.
On August 18th, Elliot Ness, along with 35 police officers and other detectives, raided the homeless encampment in Kingsbury Run. 63 men would be detained during this raid. Once the shanty town was emptied, it was searched by police. It was lit on fire and it subsequently burned to the ground.
I wish everybody had digital cameras back then so that you could see what this all looks like, because there's been a lot of things I've just been like, what? Like a lot of the, like, finding the body parts, head and torso, or in
there were trousers. And there was a red, like a blue jacket.
Yeah. And then the other things that they found, there's just a lot of weird, like the quilt. You know, like, and you described it in such a, like, what's weird about a quilt at a dump site? Like,
somebody knew, sensed it.
Yeah, I mean, if I picture a dump site here, there's definitely some quilts out there in those
100%.
piles. But now I'm more than anything, I want to know like what the shanty town looks like.
But
I'm,
you also
I'm
have to,
imagining
like
Skid Row, like just
think that's what it
homeless
was.
encampment.
But you have to like think he's leaving bodies in plain sight, right? Like the person who is hired to catch you can see these 2 bodies from your window. And then you go to all this effort to like hide other bodies, put in a dump. Like, what are you doing? Like, that isn't a sane human being. That's somebody who like maybe like goes back and forth between ideas about the person they want to be. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to wrap a leg in butcher paper, secure it with and then leave other body parts completely in the open for the man who was hired to catch me to see.
That's true. I didn't.
Homeboy is insane.
I didn't think. I actually thought it was more of a sane act to do, because you're doing all these things to throw off the people that are looking for you.
But at the same
like
time,
you have
maybe
nothing
you're just not
the same for them to look at every single time. But at the same time, if you're getting away with something enough one way, why not keep doing it that way?
Well,
or like slightly change it a little bit, but not change it every single time, because then you're just kind of asking for, I'm going to slip up.
Yeah. Well, I've been talking a lot about what our villain has been doing. Would you like to know what our hero, Elliot Ness, has been up to?
Just busting people for drinking.
Well, at one point, he's going to focus in on one suspect. This suspect was one Dr. Francis E. Sweeney.
A medical guy.
Yes.
All right.
Now, Sweeney had enlisted in a medical unit during World War I, and he actually performed several amputations while on the battlefield.
Oh, wow.
He had been described as large and physically strong, which somebody would have to be if he's going to use decapitation as a method of killing peeps.
So he's like perfect for inspiring so many horror
Dr.
movies.
Sweeney. Now, Dr. Sweeney worked at a hospital called St. Alexis Hospital, which was located near Kingsbury Run. But he would be fired at some point due to his alcoholism. So he clearly would have listened to our podcast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and which explains maybe the spontaneity to his killings.
The randomness.
The randomness. Or not randomness, that was the word. Though Dahmer was pretty much an alcoholic, and
yes, he was.
kind of did the same thing over and over.
He actually reminds me a lot of Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, in 1934, Dr. Sweeney's wife left him, and then she filed for divorce in 1936. This would have been right around the time that the Mad Butcher killings began. When police finally moved on Dr. Sweeney, they made him one offer. And I'm assuming it was an offer he couldn't refuse.
An offer you can't refuse.
Now, he could go with police for a discreet interrogation, or they would haul him down to the station, turning him into the media spectacle he deserved to be.
That was a good, you got a little bit of that.
Yes, see?
Yeah. 20s twang on there,
Any which
30s
way.
twang. Nah, here, you see?
It was
We'll make
ridiculous.
you a media spectacle, you hear?
Yep. Well, Dr. Sweeney chose the former and spent the first 3 days in a luxury hotel, simply sobering up.
3 days.
So he literally was drinking the bee's knees, followed by the
Corpse Reviver.
the bee's knees, and then the just back to back over and over.
Just over and over. Corpse Reviver, bee's knees, corpse reviver. Yeah, he was reviving himself from the bee's knees.
And he was just
Bee's
enjoying
knees
the
brought him
bee's
back down.
knees.
Corpse reviver.
3 freaking days, Jace, to sober up.
That's a long time. That means
A long time.
he was an alcoholic for
Well,
sure.
And then he showed up. Once he was sober, Dr. Sweeney was interrogated by 4 men. Elliot Ness, the untouchable, Dr. Royal Grossman, who was a court psychologist, Lieutenant David Cowles, and Dr. Leonard Keeler, who is actually one of the inventors of the polygraph machine.
No way.
Yes.
This dude was so smart. He figured out how to create technology
Yes.
to tell if you're lying or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but they still won't allow it in court.
No.
They're like, that's cheating.
Now, the investigators had to be incredibly cautious because Sweeney happened to be related to a very powerful politician. Congressman Martin L. Sweeney was his first cousin, and he was an outspoken, active member of politics. Everyone involved knew if the congressman got wind what was happening, it would be quickly shut down.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me?
No. So it was on Tuesday, August 23rd, that a sober and well-dressed, confident Dr. Sweeney greeted his 4 interrogators wearing dark-framed glasses, which only complemented his confidence and his striking Irish features. And let me tell you, if I could just like summarize,
So he's
kicked
an
their
Irishman?
butts. He just like, they showed up like ready to get him to confess. And he was just like, nope, nope, and nope the entire time. He
so
just was
funny.
beyond what they thought they were going to get their hands on.
I kind of feel, I don't know. I had a feeling you
He
were going
just
to, like, that's the way
beyond.
this dude was going to be. I also imagine this guy, because you said he was this giant dude,
Just
doctor, all that. I was like, who could do that of like movies that I've seen? And I think of, I think it's called Midnight Meat Train. It's got that English, well, first of all, it's got America's
watched this
heartthrob.
together.
What's
Bradley
his name?
Cooper.
Bradley
Was
Cooper.
it Bradley Cooper?
Yep.
We literally watched
and it's
this
got
on
the
one of our
English
first dates.
soccer guy. With I don't even
don't
know his
know.
name, but you know who I'm talking about. He's a big ass dude, and he's
We
the bad
literally
guy.
watched this on one of our first dates.
We did, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Anyway, so that like tall
Anyway,
English look is what I was
just
picturing, and
this
Irish
guy.
come on, Irish, Scottish, English, they're all kind of the same. They won't admit that, but we know it's true. They all have goofy accents, and I guarantee you he looks at like that. Also, I was picturing Kevin Costner. He's about to
Anyway,
interrogate him, and I will tell you, Untouchables. Kevin Costner does play Ness.
He beat them all. So Sweeney was interrogated for hours and revealed nothing. After the initial questioning, which led to little to no information and definitely no confession, Dr. Keeler, who invented the
Polygraph.
tested Sweeney several times using his polygraph machine.
Oh, he actually was testing
Yes.
it, huh?
Yep.
Nice.
Based on the results, Dr. Keeler was confident that Dr. Francis E. Sweeney was the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run.
Messed
But
up
without
camera.
any evidence tying him to the crimes or a confession from his own lips, which was likely never to come, Elliot Ness was left with a difficult decision to make. And yet we will never know what decision he made, because what happened over the next 2 days is completely unclear.
What?
2 days after the interrogation ended, Dr. Sweeney admitted himself to the Sandusky Veterans Hospital. From that day, August 25th, 1938, to Sweeney's own death in 1965, Sweeney moved from hospital to hospital all across the United States of America. Sometimes it would be at a veterans hospital, and sometimes it would be at a mental hospital.
Wait,
The
he
only-
never stayed outside of a hospital.
No, the only commonality was that notes were left in each and every one of Sweeney's hospital files that made it clear that police were to be immediately notified if Sweeney checked himself out of the facility and left the premises.
So there weren't even notes saying police must escort this man.
No, it was if he leaves, let us know.
You just need to let us know. Oh, what?
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, this dude has
Let's dive in.
he's got some Hunter Biden connections.
He's got people in high
got
places who will shut shiznit down if they know what's happening.
Yeah.
And homeboy Elliot Ness has a choice to make. Like in my sources, it talked about how he was willing for the second Dr. Sweeney left the hotel to have people follow him every day for the rest of his life. That was like a choice that he was willing to make because he knew
that's what
homeboy Sweeney was out there butchering people.
Yeah, and I'm guessing behind closed doors. Behind closed doors.
The meeting they probably had.
Yeah, the meeting. I'm guessing there was something in there that I don't know, a lot of back and forth, and eventually this dude, between his family saying, "We know this is you," this detective has given us enough, and him really thinking about his life choices.
So one fact that cannot be ignored is that once Sweeney admitted himself to a hospital, the Mad Butcher killings completely ceased. But there is one strange tangent that I have to address before wrapping up the story of Dr. Sweeney and the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run killings. A lawman, and I call him a lawman because I don't know the context of his existence, Sheriff O'Donnell hired a private detective to look into the slayings, and this is what the private investigator found. During the course of this investigation, our PI, named Pat Lyons, stumbled upon a middle-aged alcoholic named Frank Dozel. Frank happened to frequent a tavern where two of our ID'd victims, Andrassi and Polio, also visited. When the sheriff searched a room once rented by Dozel, he discovered human blood stains on the floor and a knife. Dozel literally was arrested and wound up confessing in some drunken, slurred rant to the murder of Flo Polio. According to the confession, Dozel claimed to have had a fight with Flo.
Flo's our third one, right?
Yeah. When she went after him with a butcher's knife. But whether or not there was any truth to what Dozel said in connection to our victim or any of the other victims would remain unseen. Dozel hung himself before he could go to trial.
All right.
So what do you think about this random appendage, red herring? I don't know.
I think it's a red herring.
Was he just a drunk man?
It's a red herring. It's a distraction. I don't think there's...
Oh, poor Dozel.
All right. I think it's some sad drunk trying to get a name for himself. Doesn't have anything else going for him. I mean, we see it happen now. I don't know what the mentality is behind that, but the reason I am willing to just dismiss it is I think there's heavier evidence in the aftermath of these 2 days of secret meetings between Ness and Sweeney.
Yeah.
The fact that he goes to these hospitals, the insane asylums, and never actually checks himself out of them, he does, but in the sense of
checks himself into
he's not
one.
out.
Yeah.
He's just automatically into a next one. I mean,
All right.
I don't think anybody. I mean, I don't think anybody's documented another person doing that.
Wow.
Unless the drugs are really fucking fantastic. And it's just like, well, I've overstayed my welcome here. They're on to me. They know I'm not insane, and I just want the drugs. So I'm going to go to the next one. But the notes left that tell whatever hospital he's at to let the police know if he's leaving. Like, that just tells me that this dude probably did it. I don't know. What other things do you possibly have on this?
Now, Dr. Sweeney spent the last decade of his life as a patient at Dayton's Veterans Hospital. Here, Sweeney would wander around the surrounding neighborhood as he wrote prescriptions for himself on a small pad of white paper. It was also during this decade that Dr. Sweeney, who most people believed to be the Mad Butcher, wrote incomprehensible note cards addressed to none other than Elliot Ness, perhaps because he at one time considered this man to be his nemesis. Maybe these indiscernible note cards hide the truth of the doctor's own actions buried somewhere within the confusing, scrawled characters. These note cards, seemingly the product of a real-life Joker. Not the Joker who moved about the streets of Gotham, intentionally provoking the Batman, but rather one who lurked, skulking through the makeshift roads in a shanty town in Cleveland, Ohio, at a time when the world felt like it had gone mad, wrestling with his own monster. Perhaps these note cards are a villain's last attempt at a calling card to reach out to the Batman in his own story in order to taunt a hero one last time. Maybe just to remind this hero that he had failed, that he in fact was never able to catch a villain as he roamed the ramshackle streets of a city utterly down on its luck, just bursting with victims no one would notice or miss, many of who to this day have never been given the dignity of an identity. But perhaps it wouldn't matter if they had. In a story with a horrifying villain like the Joker and a powerful hero like the Batman, who remembers the names of the victims anyway?